Important note before the video. This video builds on what has been said during the 6 working ways video. I'll try to make it understandable for someone who hasn't seen that video, but much like a greedy DLC dealer, I must inform you that if you want the full experience, you're gonna have to watch that one first, or already be familiar with the 6 working ways. Thank you. On to the video. The first ones were brothers, Anu and Padme. They came into the void, and time began. As Anu and Padme wandered the void, the interplay of light and darkness created Nirn. 3 is the number of the prime celestials, for 2 lacks vision, and attempts to display duality, which we all know is impossible. A question for you, dear viewer. How many times must a pattern be repeated before it becomes an observable law? And if there is an answer to this question, was it ever just a recurring pattern, or was it a law all along? In this video, we will explore another one of those obscure topics, the ones you read about, see several times in seemingly disconnected locations, but can never really make heads or tails of them. Trinities in the Elder Scrolls. There are so many of them, but what are they all about? There is no single answer to this question, only reoccurring patterns, but still there is so much to be learned from exploring the concept of the Trinity in the test universe. I only have a few lines of disclaimers this time, so massive steps forward happening here. In making this video, I have used only one, count them, one out of game text that was later verified by an NPC in game. So it could be said that this entire video is using only in-game sources. And lastly, not every Trinity in the Elder Scrolls is part of the Trinities that we will talk about today. The Nightingales are a Trinity, and so are the 3 banners that fought each other during the events of ESO. What we are talking about here specifically are metaphysical Trinities. These are defined as such, any trinity that is of cosmic significance for whatever reason. This definition might seem a bit broad, but this is intentional. Some trinities serve different purposes, and although patterns certainly exist, there is, to my knowledge, no concrete definition. And with that, let us begin. The first trinity we will talk about is the one I already read in the intro of this video, Anu, Padme, and the outcome of their interplay. According to the undated Anuat, these 2 forces represent light and darkness, and their creation was called Nirn. The monomyth, another text that talks about the myths of creation, skips Nirn altogether and says that the outcome of their interplay was just the grey maybe, which is Nirn in LNFX. No matter the story, the same outcome emerges, which is the existence of 3, Anu, Padme, and their creation, order, chaos, and the grey maybe. This is the first trinity. Several other trinities copy from this one. Another element of this trinity that we have to keep in mind is this: the creation of the 3rd being causes the other 2 to change, or at the very least, act in different ways. This is true in the Anuat, and it's also displayed very well in the Yokudan creation story. In that story, Agel, the running hunger, takes the form of Padme and causes Sadak, the snake who came before, which basically stands for Anu, to eat himself until he bites his own heart and dies. And as the old serpent dies, a new one, Satagal, begins. Another trinity. This isn't something that is agreed by all sources, but it's a recurring enough pattern that I think it's at least worth mentioning. From the first trinity, we now have to go to the one that picks up directly from where the last one left off. Auriel, Lorkhan, and Mundus. This one follows the exact same rules. Auriel represents everlasting stasis, and Lorkhan represents change. Auriel is an offshoot of Anu, and Lorkhan is an offshoot of Padme. The exact same thing that happened between Anu and Padme also happened between these 2 characters, but this time it was personal. Anu and Padme are states of being, is and is not. For all the theatricality of the undated Anuat, it's a story that contains the truth. The whole story of that book is not the truth. Now, however, characters like Lorkhan and Anuel have personalities, and the same motif followed. Lorkhan convinced Auriel and his followers to create a new realm, Mundus, thus forming a new trinity, with Mundus being the 3rd part. During this endeavor, they both changed, and in the end, this creation resulted in a bitter conflict, the outcomes of which was that Auriel lost a lot of his powers and was forever bound to the realm realm they created, and Lorkhan died, or at the very least, the divine Lorkhan, the offshoot of Sithis and Parome, died. So what's going on here? Why are the most important events in the history of this franchise happen because two forces created a third, which then changes both of them? Before we talk about other trinities that form from this point onward, I want to answer this question, and we get an answer to this question from an obscure location in the Somerset Isles. Generally, the elves seem to be obsessed with numbers and their importance. Numbers in the Elder Scrolls can be a bit of a cliche sometimes. So much so that people often joke about it. There is a fisher added with the anniversary edition of Skyrim who lives in the docks of Riften. When completing quests for him, he can give you books about fishing. In these books, you can find gems such as this, and I quote, "The cod is a remarkable fish, which you can identify by its 3 torso fins. They say all the best things in life come in threes. A good play has 3 acts. A sandwich has 3 parts. The Dunmer worship 3 gods. Triangles." I like it when they throw some silly notes, just like this one, in video games. It's a nice way to tell the player to maybe chill and have some fun. But we are not here to chill. In the Somerset Isles, there is a location called the Garden of the Sacred Numbers. It's a lovely little place. There is a note here called Thoughts on the Sacred Numbers, a philosopher's contemplation on the sacred numbers, which reads, "As I sit here in the perfection of this garden, I contemplate the sacred numbers that we recognize as auspicious and critical to the existence of the universe. 3 is the number of the prime celestials, as embodied in the sun and the 2 moons." Then he talks about his daughters. Sure, why not? We must beware the bad number, though, for 2 lacks vision and attempts to display duality, which we all know is impossible. The reason for 3 is because when 2 oppositional beings or states of being interact, a third one is always created. Duality is impossible because the concept of duality defeats itself if 2 beings were exactly the same. If it was just Anu and Anu, or Parome and Parome, then there would only be 1 being. But here we have the mention of another trinity, and this is where things start becoming a bit more complicated, because now we're gonna talk about the Celestials, the third trinity, the thief, the warrior, and the mage. And this is where the terms start to evolve, because although this trinity is different than the other 2 trinities, we will see later that at least in some respects, they're still connected. In the night sky above Mundus, there are 3 guardian constellations that protect all the other ones against the serpent constellation. When the guardian constellations fall, or when Mundus is at a state of chaos, it can be said that this is the age of the serpent.
The thief has found the lock that he cannot break. The warrior, the foe that cannot fall. The wizard, an incantation that takes not to his tongue. Truly this is the age of the serpent, and the void that follows.
An important note, the Age of the Serpent refers to a time of great chaos. However, the Serpent constellation itself does not rotate like the other constellations. For the most part, it is an unpredictable constellation. So the Age of the Serpent and the rotation of the Serpent are 2 different things. The events of the Elder Scrolls Online take place in an Age of the Serpent. During these events, the Serpent corrupted 2 of the 3 Guardian constellations and forced the thief one into hiding. During the main story of the Craglorn map, we can talk with the thief, and it's during this dialogue that we learn a lot about the constellations. Who are you?
I am the celestial thief. I appeared with the other guardians when the serpent broke free and manifested in Tamriel. One by one, the serpent trapped the others. First the warrior, then the mage. He wants to do the same to me.
The serpent is controlling them.
Yes. They attack Craglorn against their will. Listen. The serpent's nature is chaos. He wants to undermine the very order of reality. He will not stop with Craglorn. My power alone is not enough. You must free the other guardians. I will help you as much as I dare, but the serpent is looking for me.
Are you really the thief constellation?
In a way. Just as you might look at a picture of the star signs and say, that's the thief, or that's the warrior. Just so, I'm the thief, or one way of seeing the thief.
Tell me more about the Guardians.
Of the 12 rightful star signs, it's the Guardian's duty to protect the lesser signs, our charges, against the destructive ways of the Serpent.
It is heavily hinted later on that the Serpent and the other constellations were once humans that became constellations. The Warrior constellation has a soul sword, the Mage has a special staff, and the Serpent has an actual name. He's called Malazar. In the Sermons of Vivek, the Serpent constellation is heavily associated with Lorkhan, as in the Sermons, a part of Lorkhan's soul called the Void Ghost lives inside the Serpent constellation. Though if you're looking for a specific reason as to how this rivalry between the Thief, the Rogue, the Mage, and the Serpent began, I'm afraid I will disappoint you. It can be argued that the Serpent represents all the bad parts of change, and therefore Lorkhan, decay, the passing of time, conflicts, violence, that kind of thing. But that's only a theory. If we take the way the Serpent reacts and what the Age of the Serpent entails, it can be argued that this is a strong theory, but again, this is only a theory. Why does this Trinity matter at all? Thematically, it has nothing to do with the other two, and it's only loosely tied together with the other two conceptually because of the thoughts on the Sacred Numbers letter from earlier. Well, this is where the fourth Trinity glues these two concepts together. The Alm-Si-Vi. The Alm-Si-Vi is a trinity made up of Vivek, Sothasil, and Almalexia. There is a thief who is Vivek, a mage who is Sothasil, and a warrior who is Almalexia. In the Sermons of Vivek, it is described how Almalexia and Sothasil are the ones that, through their actions, created Vivek. Sothasil's nature is anuic, and Almalexia's is paramaic. Despite what I just said, all of this is not the real story, but it connects the points and tells us that there is something overarching with these trinities. The Alm-Si-Vi, as this trinity is called, was created as a religious replacement for the three good Daedra after the Battle of Red Mountain and the curse Azura placed on the Danma race. The importance of this trinity isn't in its metaphysical functionality, because it is stated time and time again that it's fake. Its importance lies in its necessity to the people. Vivek talks about this with Almalexia in Sermon 18. Can a member of the Invisible Gate become so archaic that its successor is not so much an improvement of the exact model, but rather a related model that is just needed more because of the currency of the world's condition? Listen, the age of Anu and Padme is long gone. The age of Auriel and Lorkhan's war is over. Nowadays, people even mix them into the same god sometimes, and different versions of them have been shown working together on occasion, such as during the Elysian Rebellion. Why do people keep clinging on to the concept of the Alm-Si-Vi, the good Daedra, and the stars in the sky? They are, by all means, ancient legends. Can one oust the model? Not because the model is set according to an ideal, but because it is tied to an ever-changing, unconscious, mortal agenda? It seems that we have run into the same issue. What came first, the chicken or the egg? The Trinity or the need for Trinities? There is an answer to this question, but I want to close this section on the Alm-Si-Vi first by saying this. The Alm-Si-Vi was a false trinity that showed itself as a single god made up of three equal parts that represent different aspects of the one god. In this case, it was smokes and mirrors. But what if there was an essential truth to this concept that was just applied in the wrong way? The last trinity is the trinity of Zurn Arctus, Hjolti Earlybeard, and Ysmir Wolfhearth. It is also, by far, the most confusing. I will start off with the things that we know about and then progress to the details that we aren't so sure about and or are contested. We are in the last days of the Second Era. The world is a powder keg of war and conflict. In this environment, the Greybeards of Skyrim send a message that a new emperor will soon rise, defeat the elves, and unite Tamriel. Wolfhearth, the legendary king of Skyrim, who was defeated by the Chimera during the Battle of Red Mountain, long dreamed of becoming that emperor, but he soon realized that it was not him who was chosen, but a warrior from High Rock called Hjolti Earlybeard. So Wolfhearth decided to join him. Battle after battle, Hjolti and Wolfhearth conquered more and more territory. Hjolti, at this time, had an imperial battle mage called Zuran Arctus, who Menimarco, the god of worms, claims that Zuran Arctus has been around since the Middle Dawn. That would make him around 4,000 years old, though back then he went by a different name. Another interesting note, in the Songs of Pelennor, and I know this video isn't fixing my reputation on making things complicated, but in the Songs of Pelennor, the following is stated: he was Pelennor III, though whether this was because some said he was a god geyser who had incarnated twice before, or that, simpler, he was the third vision given to Parif, Anon Alesia, before he walked among the quarters of the rebellion, is unknown. These avatars of a god geyser are the avatars of Lorkhan, which Wulfharth is confirmed to be one of. So, who is the second one that was born before Pelennor? It is heavily hinted that the second avatar is Arctus. Menimarco says that Arctus used to be called Arnant the Fox, and in another source, the Adabala, it says that Morahaus, who is the nephew of Pelennor, said that Pelennor will and has come before as fox animal or light. But here's another curveball. The term Underking is used for Zuran Arctus and Wulfharth interchangeably. When the Underking talks in Daggerfall, he says that the heart of Tiber Septim's mage is his heart. However, in several documents, too many for this to just be a typo, it is mentioned that Amalexia called Izmir Wulfharth the Underking to help the Alm-Si-Vi during the second Akaviri invasion, and it only gets more complicated as the avatar of Tiber Septim that shows up to the Nerevarine during the events of Morrowind has half of the name of Wulfharth. So, seriously, what's going on?
Hjalti? I never heard of anyone named Hjalti. Tiber Septim had many names. Maybe that's one of them.
This is where the one out-of-game source is needed. I will now quote from the text The People of Morrowind. When talking about the times the Numidium was used, a Marukadi selective had this to say: among other things, the second to see the brass god was the enantiomorph. You may know them individually as Zuran Arctus and Talos. The Oversoul was known to the world as Tiber Septim. They gave birth to their Mantella, this time an embodiment of the healing of the Man-Mer schism, and with it, a Numidium walked. We have talked about the enantiomorph before, but with different terms. It is the process by which one being walks like a dead being, and in doing so, it becomes the dead being. How reliable is this source? The prophet from the Knights of the Nine DLC says the following about Zuran Arctus and Talos.
And Talos said to the Arctus, "Let us join as one to fortify this throne, this land, these people, each one glorious under heaven."
There is an issue with this. Talos is the god, which only appears after the Numidium was activated. How was Talos able to talk to Arctus? Here's the answer. He didn't talk to Zuran Arctus while he was alive. He talked to him, or rather, a version of Talos talked to a version of Zuran after they were both, along with Wulfharth, inside the Mantella, inside the Numidium. From the Arcturian heresy, the Underking arrives and is ambushed by the Imperial Guards. As he takes them on, Zuran Arctus uses a soul gem on him. With his last breath, the Underking's heart roars a hole through the Battle Mage's chest. In the end, everyone is dead. The Underking has reverted back to ash, and Tiber Septim strolls in and takes the soul gem. When the Elder Council arrives, he tells them about a second attempt on his life, this time by his trusted battle mage, Zuran Arctus, who was attempting a coup. He has the dead guards celebrated as heroes, even the one that was blasted to ash. He warns Cyrodiil about the dangers within, but says he has a solution. The Mantella, the soul of both Zuran Arctus and Wulfharth, is in the Mantella. They are both dead, yet still possess the same soul, albeit in different ways. The following lines confirm this. The Underking was not exactly Lorkhan. Two oppositional souls that are identical, quite literally, the definition of the enantiomorph. So they mantle into one being, the Underking, and that image of the Underking replaces their previous identities. Zuran Arctus and Wulfharth no longer exist, but they once did exist, and now they share the same title, the Underking. They both picked up the mantle of the dead god and each other and united together to create something else. But the story does not end here. Hjalti, the one now called Tiber, enters the Numidium. Inside the Numidium is where the enantiomorphs happen. All three of them together make Talos, the god. Arctis and Wolfarth make up the Underking. Talos and Zirnarctis make the oversoul of Tiber Septim. But what about Wolfarth and Hjalti? In the Pocket Guide to the Empire 1st edition, it mentions the following. He was born in Atmora as Talos, Stormcrown in the language of the ancient Elnefey, and it was from that shore he sailed. He spent his youth in Skyrim among the Nords. There he learned much from the Tanks and their chieftains and their ways of war. At 20, he led the invasion of Old Horlton, taking it back from the Witchmen of High Rock and their kinsmen. This isn't just the backstory of Hjalti, at least not only. This is the backstory of both him and Wolfarth. The Numidium's existence is a walking temporal anomaly due to its nature of being a massive, reality-denying robot. Time and space are a part of reality, therefore it rejects those concepts. Allow me to make this story as easy to understand as this franchise will allow me. All three of these characters, Hjalti the thief, Zirnarctis the mage, and Ysmir Wolfarth the warrior, enter the Numidium either due to their own free will or because they have died and ended up in a mantella in the Numidium. There, they all worked just like Lorkhan, whose soul they all shared, yet in different ways. A thief, a warrior, and a mage, all souls with the same shape but oppositionally placed, enantiomorphed. They mantled the dead god, and even more than that, they mantled each other, and through this process, they became new, as their older selves are now dead. Zirnarctis and Wolfarth become the Underking. Wolfarth and Hjalti become Talos, which means Stormcrown in Elnefex. Talos the Stormcrown and Zirnarctis become Tiber Septim, and all three of them together become Talos, the god that exists beyond conventional time and space, but still confined within them. The Amaranth is a different story. Due to this, Talos does not have a beginning point, at least not in the way we think. He always existed, even before Anu and Parome, so the outcome of the last Trinity, Talos, was there even before the first Trinity began. One last question. Does this count as a dragon break? No, please no. I don't think so. Enantiomorph and dragon breaks are different topics. Not everything that alters time is a dragon break. Think of it more like the jungles of Cyrodiil, though it's not exactly identical to that either. I'm also not talking about the other aspects of the ascension of Talos, because I already did so in the last video. And with that, wow, what a video, huh? I hope things here made sense. I wish I could say that this is the end of the complicated stuff. However, there are still many more stories to tell. What do you think of what I just said? These are difficult topics. I'm sure that I got at least something wrong, but I think that the fundamental argument about trinities in the Elder Scrolls is correct. Hopefully. Thank you for watching this video. I shall proceed to sit in a chair until the headache dissipates. While I'm here, I want to say thank you to all the members of the Woodlands for enabling me to monetize my incoherent ramblings. And with that said, bye bye.